So welcome everyone. As you understand, this is a digital program. We have, participants since morning at the Bengal Chamber in Kolkata, and also we have participants online across geography. So this session, role of corporates in healthcare, is being chaired by Dr. Robin Chakraborty, Senior Vice Chairman, Cardiology Services and Senior Consultant, Interventional Cardiologist, Medical Super Specialty Hospital. Professor Manoshi Roy Chaudhary, Co-Chairperson, Techno India Group, is also with us with Dr. Robin Chakraborty, Dr. T. Rajgopal, CEO, Bridge Candy Hospital Trust, Mumbai, and Dr. Anindam Kaur, Chief Intensivist and Department of Critical Care, Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital, are online.
Thank you, Angana. I think we are, without wasting much time, I think we should start the session, if you all agree. So, as we all know that the healthcare is a very important sector for the employment, as an employment opportunity, obviously for the patient's care, to bring wellness in illness, and also to enhance the fiscal strength of the country in general, wherever it may be. And on the top of that, I personally feel it's a great employment opportunity for and various sectors. In addition to medical professionals, there are a lot of paramedicals, a lot of non-medical people who are actually working in the health sector, both in government as well as private sectors. So the corporate doesn't mean a one particular group or one independent organization. It's basically the concept behind the healthcare, and progressively the entire world, including the NHS in the United Kingdom, and obviously it was there in the United States, Europe in general, they are actually moving towards this kind of concept. So this afternoon, we are going to focus on the conceptualization of the healthcare in corporate manner, and at the same time, we are also we would like to talk about the people who are involved in the healthcare in the corporate sectors and other sectors. So with that introduction, I think we can start the session. Right. So as a first speaker, may I invite Dr. T. Rajgopal, Chief Operating Officer, Bridge Candy Trust, Mumbai, and Dr. Rajgopal. Anyway, but I also welcome Arindam. Nice to see you. And you just quietly left the city without even, I did not sign that paper which allowed you to travel from Kolkata to Mumbai. But anyway, I'm very happy to see you again. And Dr. Rajgopal, nice to see you. It was nice that we spoke to each other over phone. And I actually gone through a presentation before coming over here. Okay. So with that introduction, Dr. Manoshi Roy Chaudhary is another speaker and my co-chairperson for this meeting. So we are going to start straight away to the topic by Dr. T. Rajgopal. And we would like to hear from you about your thoughts and your input towards the role of corporates in healthcare. Dr. T. Rajgopal, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the next 10 minutes or so, what I'm going to do is try and show you how we can, as healthcare administrators, actually influence the health and well-being of the employees working for us. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. If you can able me to share the screen, because currently the host has disabled participant screen sharing. Can someone help me to enable it?
Yes, sir. You are being given the host, right?
Thank you. So just tell me once it appears on the screen. You can see this now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Maybe if you could put it in
I am going to do that. Yeah, I'm just going to do that. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm going to speak of the role of corporates in healthcare. And actually, I don't know how many of us are actually aware that 2021 is the International Year of Health and Care Workers. That means all those working for us in hospitals, whether corporate hospitals, public hospitals, in hospital, how do you ensure their health and well-being? One of the key things which I would like to actually emphasize is that currently India is in the midst of a huge outburst, or if you may say, a sort of an epidemic of non-communicable diseases. If you look at the global statistics, almost 71% of the deaths are because of non-communicable diseases. And many of them are actually because of cancers, respiratory disease, diabetes, heart conditions, etc. Tobacco use, physical inactivity, and the harmful use of alcohol all contribute towards this massive outburst of non-communicable diseases. And if you look at the recent review of healthcare professionals, people working in hospitals, it could be doctors, it could be nurses, it could be paramedical staff, they also suffer from a lot of depression and anxiety. And many of them actually don't have proper sleep. When I say proper sleep, at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep per day. Sleep is in fact a very, very neglected part of overall health and well-being. The work-related health conditions that cause the most deaths are pulmonary disease, obstructive pulmonary disease, stroke, and heart attacks and ischemic heart disease. And why is it that India bears the brunt of it? It's almost that, there's a great underlying genetic predisposition to something called as a metabolic syndrome, where you have heart disease, you have diabetes, you have central obesity. And there are some markers which are elevated if you do their routine periodical checks. And you would find that they have high blood pressure, elevated levels of lipoprotein A. And increasingly, the shift in nutrition towards a non-vegetarian diet coupled with tobacco smoking actually increases the risk. What are the recent advances which you can actually use in terms of understanding who are more prone to, let us say, heart diseases or diabetes? India is, of course, known as the diabetic capital of the world. And I won't go through the details of all these genes, but these days, sophisticated genetic tests can be done through a simple saliva test, where you look at various sorts of genes which cause an increase towards the preponderance of certain conditions. The most famous, of course, not looking at this chart, is the BRCA1 and the BRCA2, from which you can make out if somebody is prone to breast cancer. Similarly, for diabetes and for hypertension, the genes listed here act as a marker to understand that this person would have either of these conditions or a complications. And they are caused by single nucleotide polymorphisms on the gene of an individual. I'm going to give you an example from a totally different non-hospital setup. This was the organization where I previously worked before joining Bridge Candy Hospital. And their key tenets of looking after the health of their employees was based on two aspects. One is health promotion and the other is health protection. If you look at the key activities, the first column is one of health promotion. They used to have a program called as the Lamplighter, which was quite famous across the world. And I will tell you in a simple manner in a short while what exactly it is. So you look at health risk evaluation to biometrics, you look at nutrition, you look at exercise. Then you look at mental well-being and resilience, address all the local health risks which may be present in a particular area and deal with all of them. Increasingly, an aging workforce is also preponderance to more amount of illnesses. And in terms of prevention of occupational ill health at the workplace, it could be in terms of ergonomics, it could be in terms of environmental health, prevention of noise, allergens, etc. And we used to have sort of indicators to measure and monitor, because unless you can measure, you cannot improve the health and well-being of an individual. So what exactly was this Lamplighter? And incidentally, the World Economic Forum touted the Lamplighter as an easily replicable model for any corporate to adopt to look after the health and well-being of their employees. One is the health risk assessment, which would include your biometrics. You could do your, the blood test. You could find out about the cholesterol, the sugar, the hemoglobin, HbA1c, and you can look at obesity, weight, and so many other markers to understand where exactly an individual is. Look at the pattern of exercise. How often does a person exercise? Look at their nutritional status. A sort of a chart to look at their mental resilience. And all this translates into a scorecard which will tell you whether a person is healthy or not. And we found that the more healthy a person is, the more you engage with him, the more productive an employee becomes. And thereby the corporate performance is actually directly linked to the health and well-being of an individual. This is a big issue which is facing all corporates, whether it is the private sector, whether it is the hospital sector, any sector. And for that, it is very important that you start training people to understand early warning signs. Today in India, for instance, before the pandemic, 1 in 4 persons used to suffer from anxiety, depression, or stress. And after the pandemic, this has gone up to 1 in 3 persons. It's a huge problem, and corporate India is now getting to be aware of it. And all of us collectively need to take an action and not sweep it under the carpet. You need to engage people to build up their resilience and ways of managing pressure. It could be through various programs like mindfulness. Yoga is a very wonderful way of actually taking the pressure off. And you need to have support. And when I say support, top organizations believe that nobody should be one call, one click, or one discussion away from getting support for mental well-being. Now, let's come back to healthcare workers. Do we vaccinate our healthcare workers? They suffer from a lot of exposures to blood, to various other interaction with people. So hepatitis B, they are food handlers who work for canteens in our healthcare centers. So this is the schedule of vaccination. I'm sure the talk will be available at the end of it, so you can go through it in slightly more details. But we recommend, along with the Indian Association of Occupational Health, to vaccinate all of our healthcare employees against the entire list of conditions which has been shown here. And to that, we have just added COVID vaccination, 2 doses at least. And once the government comes out with a formal policy on booster, we would strongly encourage every healthcare worker to take a booster dose also. A very important recent aspect which has come up is that if you work too long, you can really have a serious problem. Exposure to long working hours is a bane of healthcare workers, whether you are an intensivist, where you work continuously for a number of hours, or you are a nurse in a critical care unit, or you are doing a rotating internship in terms of being a young doctor. This is the bane of all doctors and all nurses and all paramedical staff also. Working long hours can lead to stroke. It can lead to ischemic heart disease and including heart attacks also. So this is one thing which the administrators need to take into account. One is working long hours, and the other is the quality of the sleep as well. And finally, I would just like to round off my talk by talking about what are the occupational healthcare hazards in healthcare workers. Each one of these can be a separate topic for discussion, where I could speak about it for half an hour on each of the topic. But just as a sort of a synopsis, if you look at the biological hazard, you could have bloodborne conditions like HIV, hepatitis C or hepatitis B. You could have airborne pathogens like TB and other respiratory viruses. Very important for all healthcare workers to be protected against this. The physical includes radiation in the imaging department, use of lasers, where you actually use lasers in surgery and all. Even the smokes which come from that can cause you allergy, and it can cause major problems. Anesthetic agents. How do you design an operation theater so that the flow of gases is such that it doesn't pass through the breathing zone of somebody who is operating, including the anesthetics? Use of anti-neoplastic or cancer agent, disinfectants, people handling formaldehydes, especially let's say in anatomical labs and all. We have seen an increase of cancer in such people, who are handling formaldehyde for a very long time. Ergonomic is the bane of everyone, whether you are, working for a private sector, public sector, anywhere. The entire issue of work posture, lifting of weights, all this needs to be looked at carefully. And finally, psychological. I spoke to you about stress, which is really on the increase in corporate India, and not to mention about workplace violence. I just want to round out by saying that we have done a lot of studies in terms of return of investment, and whether it is 1 rupee, $1 or 1 euro, you actually get back 3 times more when you look after the health of your employee. And that is being manifested in the form of reduced absenteeism and presenteeism. What is presenteeism? Presenteeism means physically you are at a place, but because you are bogged down by illness which is not completely controlled, you are not able to offer your best in terms of productivity. So if a corporate is able to offer high quality healthcare through periodical health checkups, through preventive steps, through good nutrition, through their own canteen, then you will ensure that your people are healthy. And it is important to understand that health and healthcare workers are vital to our future. And even for any corporate, I would just say that good health is good business. So with that, I get it back to our chairperson.
Thank you, Dr. Rajgopal. It's a great presentation. And I'm very happy to note and to see that at least someone from our profession are actually thinking about the healthcare workers, which is seldom being seen worldwide, which is, I'm very happy that you did mention these people who are extremely important, but at the same time, they need to be taken care of. Unfortunately, they are not being taken care of. I've got many incidents in my personal life as I come across with many of those people in my day-to-day work. With that, may I just start the discussion? Professor Manusha Rai Chaudhary, any comment on Dr. Rajgopal's presentation?
Very nice hearing from him, and I would really say that mental health, topic which he has taken as the main source of discussion today, is also which is to be really taken care of as we have seen through these COVID days.
But anyway, I think we got about 5 minutes time to discuss. Angana, might just continue some discussion with the panelists about, or shall I just finish the presentation? Because each one may be different, or towards the end? Okay, just before Professor Raichaudhuri, you are going to present something, slides? Right, so if you could get ready over there, you can you can present from there? Yeah. If your presentation is loaded already? Oh, great. So I think we'll hear from Professor Manusha Raichaudhuri about her presentation. Meanwhile, Arindam, what are your thoughts about Dr. Rajgopal's talk? Arindam, quick.
Sir, very quickly. The mental health for both the people and also the custodians like us is very important, both physical and mental health on one part. So no one gives a care about the ergonomics, our rejuvenation and all others. And this is very important post-pandemic. In fact, sir, in our society, critical care society, we have designed and we have implemented a resilience training where we are trying to rejuvenate people who had been fighting for more than 2 years now to get back to shape and maybe prepare for any other subsequent waves and all others. So I think this is an area where Rajgopal sir has really hit, and which actually I'm very happy that a senior administrator like him is looking into it. So we are in good hands. We have hope that our issues would be addressed on that part. Rest of the things, I have certain points which I would subsequently.
Sure, sir. We'll come back to you again.
Yes,
Meanwhile,
yes.
Professor Raichaudhuri ready? So I think we will start with Professor Raichaudhuri's presentation, and then we'll come back to the discussion again. And I'm sure that you will all enjoy that. Professor Raichaudhuri. All yours.
Very good evening, and a huge thanks to BCCI for asking me to be one of the speakers for today's evening. But the main thanks from our end, from Techno India Group, goes to all those doctors, the total medical front for whom today we are healthy, we are happy, standing, arranging for such seminars, and we are really indebted to this total medical community. Thank you for choosing such a topic where we can think on, browse on what can be done for the healthcare part of the country. So it's a very good evening, Dr. Robin Chakraborty, everyone from BCCI, the dignitaries, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm humbled to be present in this forum, and my sincere thanks to BCCI to address me as a speaker on such valid topic which we are all associated with. The term health is very critical in today's rising. The word health has been synonymous with our lives. The pandemic has brought a crucial change in our lives and has pandemic has brought a crucial change in our lives and has made us value our health. The healthcare system in the corporate houses have created its niche, and it has become one of India's largest sector. It has not only confined itself to hospitals, but has spread itself to larger dimensions in dealing with hygienic products and medical equipments. Healthcare has become one of the largest sectors of the Indian economy in terms of both revenue and employment. The sector has the potential to generate 2.7 million additional jobs in India between 2017 to 2022, over 5 lakh new jobs per year. India is a land of opportunities for players in the medical devices industry, with tremendous opportunities for expansion of diagnostic and pathology centers, as well as miniaturized diagnostics. Investment opportunities and several factors for ruling the healthcare: an aging population, a growing middle class, the rising proportion of lifestyle diseases, an increased emphasis on public-private partnerships, accelerated adoption of digital technologies, including telemedicine, besides heightened interest from investors and increased FDI inflows over the last 2 decades. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only presented challenges, but also several opportunities for India to grow in the healthcare sector. Investment opportunities in 7 key segments: hospitals and infrastructure, health insurance, pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, medical devices, medical tourism, which is actually taking a good shape in these days, home healthcare, as well as telemedicine and other technology-related health services. Gateway to investment since COVID-19. The crisis has opened the floodgates for Indian startups, many of whom have risen to the occasion and accelerated the development of low-cost, scalable, and quick solutions. Further, the pandemic is providing an impetus to the expansion of telemedicine and the home healthcare market in the country. India also has the opportunity to boost domestic manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, supported by the recent PLI schemes, alongside offering investment avenues in few segments like contract manufacturing and research, over-the-counter drugs and vaccines. Well, this actually shows that the shares of healthcare expenditure, where hospitals have taken the largest percentage of 71. Why the healthcare sector? Well, there's a strong demand. The healthcare market in India is expected to reach $372 billion by 2022, driven by rising income, better health awareness, lifestyle diseases, and increasing access to insurance. The healthcare sector is expected to generate 2.7 million new jobs in India. Attractive opportunities in the healthcare sector. The Government of India aims to increase healthcare spending to 3% of the gross domestic product by 2022. 2 vaccines, Bharat Biotech's Covaxin and Oxford AstraZeneca's Covishield, manufactured by Serum Institute of India, medically safeguarding Indian population and those of 100+ countries against COVID-19. The raising manpower. Availability of a large pool of well-trained medical professionals in the country. The number of allopathic doctors with recognized medical qualifications under the IMC Act, registered with state medical councils, National Medical Council, increased to 1.27 million in July 2021 from 0.83 in 2010. The policy and government support. In Union Budget 2021, the government allocated rupees 35 lakh crores for COVID-19 vaccines in 2021 to 22. The Indian government is planning to introduce a credit incentive program worth rupees 500 billion US dollars to boost the country's healthcare infrastructure. Well, the growth trend in this graph clearly shows that from 2008 to 2015, it's crossed 100 and expecting a 372 in the year of 2022. India's opportunity in vaccination to remodel success rates in terms of revenue and welfare of the country. Well, before going to this slide, I would like to add that we come from basically an education group consisting of schools, colleges, universities, and very recently have we started with our hospital. It's only in 2019, Techno India Dharma Hospital. But during COVID times, initially, definitely for the first 3-4 months, we were thinking of how to make that 90,000 of student base and almost 6,500 people from our group safe, other than definitely the state all around. And that is when Techno India Group is proud to announce that we had gone for a mass vaccination drive, almost 1.80 lakhs of doses being given not only to the city of Kolkata, but even to the suburbs, city towns like Mankundu, Banipur, Konnagar, and in those days, it was our team, our teachers, our principals, our office staff who had converted each unit to a vaccination center to help out, to protect, and to make the people around secured. So New Delhi has pledged to send vaccines to its neighboring countries and has already supplied 15.6 million doses to 17 countries, according to the Reuters. The success rate of the business opportunity has been immensely high. Analysts say the country has the capacity to produce for both its own population and other developing countries. With a proven track record on the scale at which vaccines are produced, India should be able to ramp up production to meet international demand as well, reported by the CNBC. Now comes the point, mental health and corporates dealing ahead. Yes, it's not only about the corporates who are facing the health problem of mental and well-being, but it's also the 1 year, 8 months when our students, our teachers, our office people everywhere throughout the state, the country, and the world were facing the same problem of being in those 4 walls, going for online either office work or classes, and not being able to meet their close ones, facing the death of their close ones, or not being able to even share their tiffin, going to their favorite teacher or their best friends. That is when the children and the adults were facing this problem of mental health. And that is when the country realized, definitely the countries outside India were working and has been working on this problem. But COVID has made us realize that doctors will be applying medicines, treatment will be done, nurses will be taking care. But if you are not mentally well, it's very difficult for a patient to revive and come back normal to the house. That is where the working for mental health and well-being came into being. Even as CBSE, the boards have implemented the new education policy, The total system of education has been changed. It's not about books. It's not about examinations. It's much more than that. You have to enjoy your studies. You have to go through arts, sports, music, dance to make your learning even more enjoyable. That is where we have to take care, because the companies are helping the workers to cope with stress through counseling assistance, career guidance, stress management, and health awareness programs. The major stress points are 84% has been seen felt more stress and anxiety at work this year than before. It's only because of COVID, the fear, the anxiety, and the lockdown periods. 92% would prefer to talk to a robot over their manager about stress at work. 32% feel the burnout from overwork. 95% believe companies should be more to support mental health of workforce, and 93% say their mental health issues at work negatively affect their home life. In this context, I would share a small dialogue by Sudha Murthy very recently when she was asked about how is she happy with her family and happy with Mr. Narayanan Murthy. And believe it or not, the reply was that he is away from his country for 90% of days. I am away from my city to the villages again for 90% of the days. So we meet each other only on this 10%. So I feel that we are happy because we meet each other less. Well, jokes apart, I wanted to convey that when there is mental well-being in the family, then a company like Infosys excels and keeps the people in the company happy. So mental health percolates down from the top management to the lower layers. The corporates are moving ahead in the path of wellness as opportunity to rise and serve. This is the page for this purpose. Now, the government initiatives. The Health Ministry's Sanjeevani telemedicine service crossed 12 million teleconsultations since its launch, enabling patient-to-doctor consultations from the confines of their homes and doctor-to-doctor consultations. Biocon Biologics Limited, a subsidiary of Biocon, announced a strategic alliance with Serum Institute Life Sciences, a subsidiary of Serum Institute of India. The alliance is expected to strengthen India's position as a global vaccine and biologics manufacturing powerhouse. The Drugs Controller General of India accepted recommendation of subject expert committee and accorded permission to conduct the phase 2/3 clinical trials of Covaxin for the age group of 2 to 18 years to its manufacturer, Bharat Biotech. We, as an education company running so many schools, are really looking forward to this point when our students below the age of 18 will be getting the vaccines to make the country and the states safer. In July 2021, the Ministry of Tourism established the National Medical and Wellness Tourism Board to promote the medical and wellness tourism in India. The Indian government is planning to introduce a credit incentive program worth rupees 500 billion to boost the country's healthcare infrastructure. So, corporates should step forward not only for profit, but also to build a healthy nation by making a healthy India. Healthcare and the corporates are the pillars of Indian economy. The integration of the healthcare sector will do wonders for the development of both these sectors. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you, BCCI, and thank you, the total medical fraternity, for making us feel happy, feel healthy at this moment after a span of 2 years of COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Rai Chaudhary. That was a very nice, very comprehensive way of presentation about the role of corporates in healthcare. Of course, we have some discussion and some questions, which probably we'll be taking after Dr. Arindam Kaur's presentation. Arindam,
Yes,
can you just
sir.
share your slides?
Sir, I do not have any slides.
Oh, right.
I
So,
thought
okay.
this would be completely, anyway,
I
but
think,
more and more I'm moving away from slides.
Sure. Okay.
So I would present myself.
Right. I think we need to. Can you get rid of this slides that we can see? Or no, I can see in one screen. The other screen is you're not being seen. That has to be okay. Arindam.
Yes, sir.
So Arindam is
Sir,
actually
I
a
thought-
very, very nice. I don't know how to describe him. He to me, he's a very nice person, like my brother, and got a lot of interest. In addition to medicine, he got other areas of interest, which probably, he travels, he does touring, and he bikes a lot of places. These are his fascination. He's a great teacher. He takes a lot of academic program, especially for the postgraduate students, and he's a very comprehensive and very accomplished critical care specialist. It's a pity that he is not in Kolkata. He has gone to western part of this country, in Mumbai. But wherever he is practicing, I'm sure the people over there are immensely benefited by his clinical input. Arindam, if you could start your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and for your kind words. So I thought I am the odd man out, sir. Like you, we are both of us are clinician mostly, and so we may not be so we might be helpful to give away a little bit of the story of the other side, the clinical specialist or the beneficiaries. So I thought the corporate initially, when we migrated from the government sector, completing our postdocs and others into corporate sector, initially it was always we come with a lot of skepticism. But later on, while being in corporate sector almost for now 2 decades, we can very pretty well say, we can gladly say or proudly say that the corporate has immensely contributed towards the growth of India's health system. So be it in a clinical services, setting up the sub and super specialties in many ways, and we can proudly say that we have at times we have done it before the government system has done that, right? And also bringing away all the different technical skills and in that way providing a better services to the Indian healthcare in the beneficiary itself. And not only that, it has created employment, as Robin sir was telling about. It's created considerable amount of employments in both skilled and semi-skilled segment. But more importantly, what corporate providing a good working environment had been able to retain the talent pool or the brain drain that we call that. So, right, we have been able to do that by giving good working environment, good platform, good skill enhancement and others. In terms of academics, initially the corporates were more into what would I say? I won't be ashamed to say that the business perspective was more important. But sooner or later, corporates actually recognize that to have a sustainable growth, that we need to have better trained and skilled people, and that can only come through continued academics. And Robin sir will agree with me that all corporates then henceforth started to invest more on academics and skill enhancement and skill development. And see, you can find out that through national board or societal fellowship or certification programs and others, corporates have almost, if not more, postgraduates and postdoctoral seats through DNBs and other these programs. So private healthcare system and corporate is now almost providing or contributing around 50% of the medical academics, but this is on postgraduate and postdoc levels, and also largely into the skill enhancements in the postdoctoral segment itself. To some extent, we might say that corporates have also contributed largely into the advancements, like right from your robotics to the multi-transplants. For example, sir, we are in Mumbai right now, in South Mumbai, Dr. Rajgopal will also agree with me. We are now leading in multi-transplants, be it heart-lung transplants, in pancreas transplant, hand transplants, gut transplant, and others. So these are all happening mostly, predominantly in the corporate segments. Then the robotics, which is actually reducing the post-operative complications and others. Then all advanced cardiac, you would agree with me, all advanced cardiac interventions in terms of be it a mitral clip or your TAVR and all these things, most of them are happening in the corporate segment, including the ECMOs and all sort of extracorporeal therapies. So it brings the latest tertiary care health into our own country, which are available anywhere in the developed country, is also available in Indian corporate healthcare system. But there are certain issues. People would say that it is only available to a very short, what would I say, small subsegment of the population, of Indian population. But corporates are also getting into the public health system. That the major contribution that corporate sector did is during the pandemic. So I am proud to say that we have saved more lives in our last 2 years than compared to the last almost 20 or 2 decades itself. And corporate have played a major role in averting the pandemic situation. And also the vaccination, the way corporate segment came forward to help government or the public sector to disseminate or to reach out for vaccination of entire population of India has been exemplary. Also, we corporate have helped in the awareness through campaigns and achievement and advertisements and all others, and to some extent this has also contributed to economy by bringing in or reversing the medical tourism itself. The other segment where corporate really have contributed, I would say, Madam mentioned about the Sanjeevani. Corporate in its own way, be it the hospital segment or individual segment, have invested into teleservices. In fact, a lot we are working with both Maharashtra and Karnataka government right now, where we are bringing in tele-ICU services to every district hospitals of Maharashtra and Karnataka. So it's a PPP model that we had started with. So tele-ICU services, teleservices and others. One real part which really have the corporate as well as private segment has brought in is the home care services, which has really helped in that way. And that the way the digital health and the medical records are also coming into, it is really a good contribution from the private sector itself. Lastly, if you see that many things are happening in the diagnostics, particularly in rapid diagnostics with shorter turnaround time, and also in the artificial intelligence, which is giving us a predictive analysis, and which I think has taken a little slower start in India itself, but it will come back it will catch up in certain years. To cut short in last 5 minutes, but I would summarize on that part, that this is the contribution of corporates towards corporate health sector, but we are yet to have the entire spectrum. So what public need from us, we need to really introspect, then the cost appropriateness has to be there. We all know that everything comes with a cost, but cost should be also appropriate to the services provided. It should not be very, very high. So people like Dr. Rajgopal or Dr. Robin sir, who are into also administration, look into this appropriateness, and we have and come up with more accountability than we do today. we should have a better communication, more transparency in our communications, billing and everything, and a little, maybe at times, a little more human approach with empathy. And lastly, that we all know that the financial things are most important. So I think the corporate proactively has to come up with some ways to engage other third party and have a better way of the paying. For example, engaging the CSRs, talking with the schemes or the government to have a better viable packages of the schemes and others. What the employees like us, right, the people who are working in the corporate, ask or need from the corporate is a better work environment or ergonomics, a good platform to have a better mental health and others, and more, and don't mind on that part, that more clinician or nurse-based management who have a better understanding of the healthcare rather than looking into only the business perspective of it. So I think Australia and NHS have taken a very proactive steps into that more and more physicians and nurses come into management or managerial decisions so that it becomes easier for them to decide. And lastly, what the employees also want is a better appreciation. Obviously, all employees want a better pay package, but more importantly, job and health security of that. We have seen that in pandemic situations, the healthcare workers were promised many things, but I'm reasonably sure that none of them has received anything, neither from the government or from the private sector. I've seen, we have, as I lead Critical Care Society in India, we have paid almost 3.5 crore rupees to our members who have either been sick or who have been deceased. None of the government who have promised many things in the paper or something, they have come forward. So this is the situation we need. A little bit of, we are not afraid of working, but maybe at times when we are feeling insecure, we think people should stand beside us. And what corporate sector want from the public or the public sector or for the government or the media is that please put us in a better light, right? Give us a better rejuvenated perception. We are just not money mongers taking money from you on that. And a little bit black or any color tapeism so that corporate processes are much faster. And we should not be burdened with the consumerism or litigation or something, because once we become more defensive, it is difficult for the beneficiaries itself, right? A sort of a doctor who feels safe in the system will function much better. I think Robin sir will agree with me on that part. The government should give us more viable packages, not packages like this, the schemes which are absolutely untenable. Everyone knows that, but still this is a populist policy and people bringing it here. And if that's so, if you are expecting that the doctors and the corporates would be much more benevolent, please give us something in return also. Why not giving us a tax exemptions from that? You expect us to do everything according to the law, and then you also expect that we would be doing in charity. Come on, we have to also survive on our own on that part. And lastly, that if you have to give the corporates a boost up, which is almost private and corporate supporting 50% of Indian health infrastructure, I think a better funding process with good terms and conditions has to be sort of looked upon by the government and the private sector. And lastly, why not give up the startup funding to the doctors itself? It's that a lot of the private sectors are smaller startups or smaller segments, things done by the individual doctors itself. So no one has looked into that a startup fundings for smaller healthcare infrastructure. So that's it, sir. I tried to give in a nutshell what corporates have given and what we expect from people, from government, from media, and also what we also expect from our corporate administrators. Thank you.
Thank you, Arindam. Thank you, Arindam. So we got some time and we got some people raising their hands. So Dr. Rajgopal, Arindam, and Professor Rai Chaudhary. So we will just start. We'll take questions. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Just hang on for a moment. Well, there are some questions on online. If you could, here on my WhatsApp, right? Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So will you address the online ones first, or shall
No, I think you are first, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Chakravarti, with your permission, I'd just like to ask one or two small questions. My first question is to my friend, Dr. Rajgopal. Doc, are you there?
Yes, very much, Mr. Lairi.
Right. Doc, you were, in your presentation, there was quite a bit of focus on, I think, workplace, focus in terms of manufacturing facilities, right? Well, that's because you and I worked on the same places and we know what is involved in manufacturing. But, you know, my basic question is that, or I'd like you to react to a suggestion that health at the workplace should actually begin at the stage you're designing a facility. Whether a facility is being designed for manufacturing, as a factory, whether it be an education institute, whether it be a hospital, whether it be an office, whatever. I think safety must be ingrained in the design. So when you design a facility, I call it design to last, you know, or design to work. So we look at, you know, how do you align the machines, and you look at the logistics, you look at, you know, work study you do carry out to see the smooth movement and so on and so forth of people and products and raw materials and all that. But what is often missed out is the fact that the facilities are being designed, all right, but at the end of the day, the people who will make optimal use of that facility are actually the people who use it. And therefore, somebody referred to ergonomic design and all that, but you know, in all aspects of design, I think health considerations, it must be a factor. So one of them is very simply, the best example is that of creating a facility which is ergonomically feasible. In other places like factories, etc., you make people unnecessarily move around, climb up and down, operate facilities, you know, operate valves and all that in odd places, which requires very odd postures to be taken and so on and so forth. But wherever whichever facility is being designed, I think design should be mandated. I mean, it should be mandated that the consideration of humans working in those facilities, those who use the facilities, must be in the forefront of design.
Right, sir.
That's one. Would you agree, Raj?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think we'll just take this question, sir, and then because you got a few more questions. Okay. Dr. Rajgopal.
And one more suggestion.
Make it brief, sir.
One more suggestion. We've been always talking about mental health. Now, mental health tends to denote you're dealing with somebody who is already mentally ill, you know. But I would say that the term should be broadened to mental well-being. Now, before you go to that stage where you require treatment, wherever you're working, you need to feel, or whatever you're occupied in, the ambience and everything, you know, cheerfulness, you know, that includes illumination, lighting, the places you walk, everything. A cheerful ambience and something that you feel pleased to work in, you know.
Sure, sir, you got it. You got your comments. So, Dr. Rajgopal?
Yeah.
Just quickly answer. I don't think there's much of questions in that. More of comments.
Quickly to the first point, absolutely right, Mr. Lairi. Design thinking is something which one needs to incorporate very early. And you are a manufacturing man. To give you a quick example, if a machine makes a noise of 85 decibels and you put 2-3 machines close together, it just goes up to 95 decibels. So if you think about it in the beginning itself, you can space them out. That's one way of looking at it. The second thing you spoke about is about the mental well-being. Perfectly right. That is the term which we use. And we also now encourage the use of mental well-being first aiders. Like you have physical first aiders for heart attack and all, there are mental well-being first aiders who are trained to spot early signs and symptoms and help you.
Yeah, I
On
think
the
you're
issue
right.
of ergonomics,
Already the term has changed. So
yeah. So on the issue of ergonomics, you have a standard checklist, which is called the ILO checklist. I would encourage everybody to have a look at it. It will help you in terms of design. And finally, it's very important that people work for good bosses, bosses who don't give them trouble. So I used to report you and you have never given me any trouble. My mental well-being is still good. Thank you.
sure. I think you got one more question. Yes, sir, behind you. I'll come back to you. Just give me time. Yeah, you got a question. Can you have a microphone?
Hello. Sunit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I have a direct question to Dr. Kaur. My question is related, a very specific question. You have talked about this ICCU, tele-ICCU. You are rendering these services in Karnataka and Maharashtra. If you can give some instances of this, number one. And the second question is about the AI predictive analysis. What are those analyses in your hospital being done? Third question is about the management participation of employees in the decision booking process that you have started executing. I would like to hear from you in this regard. And I would like to tell you one thing. CPA doesn't have even a clause, any kind of word as far as health services are concerned. So you're absolutely, you can be fearless about it, about any dangers or penalties of CPA. That is Consumer Protection Act.
Dr. Arindam Kaur.
Thank you, sir. Robin sir would vouch for me that I am absolutely fearless. I ride so it's not about the personal part. I ride a 2000cc bike in every part of the country and continent. So not about
I think your band is going.
the answers way back in 2013. Am I better now, sir?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we started in 2013, first in India itself, the Medica and the Fortis group. We started both the tele-ICU in India itself. But what was the major restraint was, or inhibitions was the pricing. But what now it has happened, it's post-pandemic. The digital connections, the 5G programs, and all the hardware and software are much cheaper now. Right now, what we have done is that the concept of PTZ camera has come, pan, tilt, and zoom, and it is now installed into smaller robotics, which can be guided into any part of the ICU itself. So, for example, if you're sitting in Kolkata and managing a ICU in Srirampur, in the command center with your joystick, you can actually get the robo with a PTZ camera into every segment of the ICU itself. And this is a two-way camera, so where your patient can also connect with the doctor sitting in the Kolkata itself. And now what we have done is that the concept of decentralized command center has also come. That means the doctor doesn't need to come to a command center and sit. He can sit anywhere, right, in the chamber itself, or he can be traveling. He has to connect with his phone or laptop and give us services to it. So anywhere can be connected to any person who is sitting anywhere. So that's the decentralized model that we are actually introducing. It will come very soon to every part. Regarding the third question, I was I didn't get your point, the patient services. So I would skip. I think Dr. Robinson will answer that.
Yeah.
It was regarding the artificial intelligence and predictive analysis.
Predictive analysis, I think Rajgopal sir will also agree with me, or he may also give some information about that. Right at this moment, it's more working on the early warning signs. So which patients are going into whether catastrophe or disasters or getting into shock, or who are more prone to develop cardiac problems and all others. So be it in your non-communicable disease, or be it in an acute care facility, mostly predictive analysis is looking into mostly those trends of an individual or of a total population itself. Another part of AI is being mostly happening in two segments. One is in imaging and one is in your pathology diagnostics, where it would be doing a majority work, AI-based work, supervised by the human intelligence. So these three things are being worked. Rajgopal sir, would you like to add, sir?
Yeah, just a quick one. In terms of COVID, we used AI significantly in imaging just to help us bolster our diagnosis. And the second one is in the entire space of histopathology, where you look at slides and all. That is one major area where artificial intelligence is actually really helping. And of course, whenever you have an algorithm for clinical pathways, that is where AI also helps. So these are major areas where AI is helping.
Correct. I think as very nicely answered by Dr. Rajgopal and Dr. Arindam Kaur, artificial intelligence is being profoundly used in various areas, particularly the two things. One is diagnostic part, like imaging. In cardiology, we are using artificial intelligence day in, day out. But much more than that, what we do, we actually plan the treatment planning, therapy planning. Oncology, they are using a lot of artificial intelligence. So that is one very important area. Only thing that this digital applicative, help of digital technology, help of other artificial intelligence are extremely useful. I request everyone present here as well as others, don't try to take help of Dr. Google. He is a nuisance. Don't take a decision from Dr. Google. He will make a mess out of your illness. Don't select a doctor by Dr. Google. Try to avoid that, because Google doesn't follow any intelligence. Google follows the frequency by which an information is being captured. So if I am being told by somebody as terrorist, and if 100 people tells me terrorist, then you click terrorist, my photograph will come up. So that is what is Google. So don't, and that's what the common people are doing, which is very unfortunate. With that, another question, which is very nice to Madam, what are corporates' role in healthcare beyond CSR, corporate social responsibilities? Professor Rai Chaudhary.
We feel as an educational company and corporate partner of Techno India Dharma as well, definitely we are looking into the rural areas, the suburbs, where we have, like we think about vaccination, we think about rural health camps, like we are going for a very recent rural health camp in Sundarbans, where the people are not being able to connect to good doctors. At least the basic health arrangement can be done, even with doctors from eye, etc., towards extending our hands towards those suburb people who do not get that facility. Even for pathology, we are planning for having small centers in and around the districts so that they can bring the material to our hospital in the city, and we can help them out.
Excellent. I think Dr. Arindam Kaur raised a very important point. You may seriously consider that, especially from your organization, is that e-healthcare, in the sense that you connect your hospital to those remote rural areas and try to connect by electronically, by digital technology, and ask your doctors to give advice electronically, and then that sort of helps a lot. Especially the image and other things can be transmitted easily, and even the diagnosis can be reasonably done, may not be accurately, but quite in a reasonable manner. At least we can, because the diagnosis of a disease is being done by two methods. We have to be very clear about it. One is by ruling in or by ruling out, right? So you collect some symptoms, which is basically complaints of the patient. Then you take some finding from a clinical examination as well as from investigation. So these are the data being captured from the patient's history, from the story, from clinical examination, from biochemical and other radiological and other image-guided data. Collect all those data and try to synthesize them to rule in or to rule out a diagnosis. So from e-care, you may not be able to rule in, but I'm sure you would be able to rule out a huge lot of differential diagnoses that will narrow down the possibility and makes your physician's life comfortable, and patient will be extremely happy to know, yes, somebody is seriously looking into his or her problem. That would be my Arindam. You would like to add on that?
Sir, the point is, with the experience of EICU, I would the teleservices, I would actually, I have suggested a little shift from the practice that we do. I have suggested that it should be from a healthcare worker to a doctor, be it a nursing or a doctor person. Because in that way, the doctor or healthcare person who is presenting from the remote area knows what we presented. And more important is not what communication is happening, but what is the way forward. How the implementation of the advice that given by you from Kolkata itself to a suburbs of or a village of West Bengal, how it is implemented, that is equally or if not more important. So these two parts has to be what is being transpired in the communication and how the next step, that is how it is implemented. If we can make that, that would be the ice on the cake.
Thank you, Arindam. I think with that note, just a last question and maybe a final comment to Dr. Rajgopal and also to other panelists. Are Indian corporates investing in research in healthcare?
Yes, my answer to that would be yes. You can actually see that many of the Indian corporates, whether they are public sector or even private sector undertakings, they regularly take part in healthcare research as it affects the health and well-being of their individuals. And the proof of that is that maybe in the last decade or so, the number of research papers coming out of institution, and I'm talking only relating to the healthcare aspect of it. I'm not talking about the hospital-based research, which is a separate thing, which also happens in a big manner in many of the major hospitals. The answer toward this, yes, people are in fact investing in research. And if you look at the big hospitals, they actually do a number of multicentric studies, collaborate with each other. A lot of information which is there on COVID today, whether it is in the Western journals or wherever, a number of it has actually come in from India through multicentric collaborative studies.
Sure. I think Dr. Rajgopal, I think taking your question a little beyond that, the question is, as you said very rightly, a lot of corporate hospitals are participating in research activities, which even in Kolkata. But this year, I wrote 3 chapters in 3 different books. But the question was a little different. Our corporates are investing on research activities. Unfortunately, the investment level, I personally feel, is low because what they are trying to do, a lot of companies are actually investing and corporate, I'm very sorry to say, actually trying to find some profit out of those investments. They are not investing directly. I think this is a wake-up call for me, this question. I think corporate hospital also should invest fund, so put fund on research organization. They're actually banking on funds of other companies and trying to make some profit out of that. In fact, trying to enroll human resources out of those funds. So these are the realities. And that is what is my experience. I'm sure we are all aware of that. And the last one, before I close, to Madam, to Arindam and Dr. Rajgopal, although you really spoke very well, covered the entire area in a very comprehensive manner, but I personally feel that one area need to be talked about and need to be focused as well, as Arindam touched upon on that little bit, that healthcare with time is actually becoming very expensive. Especially with the more and more technologies coming in, the healthcare is expensive and actually is not within the reach of common people. It's expensive, and that is the reality. So how to approach that? It's not a question of giving some kind of special scheme, because if you go for a special scheme, as Arindam said, these are not tenable options. So what are the options? So I think the corporate healthcare, corporate group should come up to ensure, including, as you said, Madam, that those people living in the remote areas should also be incorporated in some kind of insurance. If you enroll them in healthcare insurance, these costs can be covered up, as it is being done in many countries. In many countries, not much, you did not pay a lot of money. You have to motivate them that this is the small amount of money for his own well-being, because the value for the care has to be understood. That health care, if you try to offer them free, they will not understand the value of that. So you have to ensure that your health is valuable for yourself, for your family, and for everybody around you. So if you do not understand the value, if you think that, well, you can do whatever. I come across a patient today, a young boy, only 37-year-old, a medical company person came to me with his father and with his auntie with some heart problem. And he expects everything to be done free, but he drinks, he smokes. And who pays for that? He has money to buy alcohol, He has money to buy cigarettes, but he doesn't want to pay a single penny to remain himself well. That is the kind of tremendous deficiency of responsibility. So the corporate group should wake up and make every citizen sort of that you should be aware, you should be responsible, you must behave in a responsible manner to whom? Towards yourself. That behavioral change has to be done. Once you understand, I'm sure you got a health insurance, I got a health insurance, Angana also got a health insurance. Why? Because you understand it's important for us. But people in other areas, many people do not understand that. They expect everything will be free. No. If you can raise this point, and corporate should come up that yes, every citizen should be insured with a definite amount. They can get best possible care even sitting wherever they are.
Sir, all our car and bikes are mandatorily insured, but not the human life.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I'm happy that you said that. I think we should close it. Angana, I think we should close. Already we have beyond 5 o'clock, right? Okay, thank you very much. Being very wonderful. And Angana, thank you, sir. The closing remarks from you.
Thank you. So this brings us conclusion of the day one, that is Economic Summit, Health for Development. Tomorrow we'll have the Health Tech, that is Tech for Saving Lives. It will start at 2 p.m. IST. We have 3 sessions tomorrow. So I would request Mr. Aniruddha Lahiri to please present mementos to Dr. Robin Chakraborty and Professor Manoshi Roy Choudhury. To our speakers online, we will send the soft copies. Thank you to our speakers and participants who have joined with us at the chamber and also online. We are concluding day one here. See you tomorrow for day 2. Thank you.
Thank you.